This is the church of St Stephen in Saltash. There has been a church on this site for some 700 years, although of course there's been extensive modifications during that time. The churchyard has had a lot of landscaping, and the stones have been moved to the sides to allow easier clearing of the grass and undergrowth. And along here the stones have actually been used to create a boundary wall. Beyond the stones is quite a drop into the lane beneath. So these stones are acting as a fence. Just picking some that are at random but rather easy to read. This is John Keane Blight, who departed this life 1876, aged 57. Nicely carved at the top of the stone. Next to him is Abraham Crossley, who died 1824, aged 44. And beneath that his wife Anne, who died in 1848. This one to Henry Batten. Again, really nice carving at the top here with the peace dove. Henry Batten was buried in 1876. A little further along is John Batten of Tremayton in this parish, 1840, aged 55. And then Francis Batten, his son, who was just 4 years and 5 months. This one to William Pierce, 1868, aged 84. And it's remarkable how clean these stones are and how easy to read. We're talking of a stone that's been here for 150 years. This is a small column of stone, also in loving memory of William Rogers, MD, Doctor, Staff Surgeon, Royal Navy, who died at Saltash in 1904. Although the churchyard has been cleared and all the stones put to one side, it does leave a nice wildflower grass area in the centre here. And the stones are still accessible, they're still readable. This one to John Andrew Toop, beloved son of Joshua and Betsy Toop. He departed this life in 1855, aged 17 years. This one is to Betsy Brewer. It's set back in the hedgerow a bit, but what I did notice was this rather nice engraving on the stone. There's a woman obviously deeply mourning as she crouches in front of the tomb, and we've got these weeping trees above her. There are so many memorials in this churchyard that are so easy to read, whether it's the stone or the atmosphere, but they are almost as clear as the day they were made. Christiana Strathun, wife of Samuel of Saltash. She departed this life 1838. So we've got a stone here which is probably 180 years old, and it's still very readable. Across here we have more of the stones which have been put up, a whole row of them, and another row on the other side of them. They're still accessible, they're still readable, and with the clarity of the inscriptions one can almost see the names from this distance. This one to Elizabeth Worth, the daughter of John and Elizabeth Appledore, 1881. If I move to the next one, George John, son of William and M.A. Deacon, 1872, aged 26. Elizabeth Deacon, the wife of Edwin Alfred Deacon, 1866. George Wilcox, 1858. This one has a delightful surname, Elizabeth Clatworthy, 1887, and then John Clatworthy. This one's shaped a little differently. Bernard Hall, or Barnard Hall, who departed this life 1822. So there we have one that is 200 years old. Inscriptions, as I've said before, are very clear to read. Sadly though, they don't tell us anything apart from the dates. It would be nice if they put shoemaker or butcher or sailor or something about the person on the stone. The one on the left here, Polly Maria, the beloved wife of Henry Hobling. And then we move along to this one, Nicholas Robert Rickard, aged 26 in 1879. And then across to Ellen, the wife of John Hoskins, 1873. Memory of Elizabeth of John Hoskin, wife of John Hoskin. Down by one of the main gates is the War Memorial. It commemorates those from this area who died in the First and Second World Wars. On this side we have around 40 names from the First World War. And on the right hand side we have almost as many from the Second War. Now that's unusual. Usually less died in the Second War than the First War, but we are close to the Plymouth naval base here, and I would suspect the multitude of names for the Second World War are because of the naval. In the graveyard is one of the CWGC memorial stones. This is in the dark stone, which is less common than the normal Portland stone used. This is Private C. Benny, Duke of Cornwall's Light Infantry, 1917, aged 59. This stone commemorates the boys of the Mount Edgecombe training ship, and it lists their names, and the dates are not all at the same time, so obviously in different incidents and accidents, and they run from 1877 right down to the bottom there, down to 1901. Well, sadly the church is locked up, so I'm not going to be able to give you anything from the inside. This one, set amongst the wildflowers, is to Henry W. Clements, 1892, and then his wife Anne, and then their son William C. Clements. And 4 stones placed against the arch here. Nicholas Allen, 1855. Edward Dawes, 1849. Susanna Porter, the good and excellent wife of William Spicer Porter, a gentleman of Saltash. And then on the end we have Eliza Hoare, the wife of Samuel Hoare. This looks a very old stone. I can just make out the remains of Margaret Nepean, who closed a respected life at Saltash. And the date to the right there in Roman characters, I think 1790 something. A very old stone. And this rather old building in the grounds, in the churchyard, is using some stones to close up the entrance, but the building itself gives the impression it's been there for a couple of 100 years. Here they've enclosed a garden of remembrance by building a wall of all the memorials that have been removed from the main part of the churchyard. You can see 2 sides, all 4 sides, consists of these memorials. And then down on the curb beneath us, these are the memorial inscriptions for those who were cremated or buried elsewhere. Down here is a low-level stone. This is a memory of Surgeon Major General Robert Wyatt Meadows, who died in 1911, aged 79. Picked this one out because of the unusual name. Robert Bithell and then Isabella Bithell. Now, Isabella is not a name I've come across before, and she died in 1890. One that tells us a little bit about him, William Vosper, late butcher of Saltash, 1890. As I've moved into the back of the churchyard, I can see a more modern extension, which has given it a lot more space to have more burials, memorials. Just under the trees is by far the largest memorial in this churchyard. On this face it commemorates James, the second son of James Wilcox, a contractor who died at Prospect Villa, Plymouth in 1902. And on the side we have James Wilcox, the contractor. He died in 1872. And there are other inscriptions on other places on this monument. Another war grave here in the dark stone. Now, I assume the dark stone is something that comes off Dartmoor, which is very close by. Private R.P.R. Porter, Royal Warwickshire Regiment, 1920, age 21. And one close by, F.C. Organ, Chief Engineer, Artificer, HMS President, 1920, aged 54. Over against one of the walls is this rather unusual memorial, shaped like a shed, a miniature shed. And inside on the back wall, Thomas Cole Porter, Brigadier General, 6th Dragoon Guards, Carabineers of Tremayton Castle, Cornwall, 1938. And beneath that we have other members of the family. A nice example of the stonemason's work. We have this angel in front of the stone cross, and it's all been taken out of a single piece of stone. And if we go down to the inscription, Edith Emily, the wife of Russell H. Rendell, and she died in 1929. Now, this cemetery is much larger than you think. When you come to the church, it just looks like a typical churchyard, but there are hundreds more graves out here in an area behind the church. Now here's a war grave from the Second World War, and you see they're using the white stone, or one of the white stones, for these. This is Private A.E. Thorne, Royal Army Service Corps, 1945, age 24. And this is a different type of stone again. This is more creamy, more like Portland stone. Private E.E.C. Smale, Royal Army Medical Corps, 1940, age 23. And along here I'm seeing quite a number of these war graves. There's two there, one in the foreground, two further back. As I pan round I can see one in the distance, two more up there, one adjoining the path. When I reach the top of the graveyard you can get an idea of the extent of it. Here are a little group of smaller stones, and these are inscribed with the names of children and infants who died. As I move up into the more modern graves, there's one here with the image of a Mercedes at the top, a rather old style Mercedes. Cyril Roy Stidston, 2001, aged 71. And beneath, his wife has written, "Motor on, my darling." A large area here with a cross at the top and some plaques on the ground here. And this reads, Patricia Viscountess Boyd of Merton, 2001. Alan Tyndall Lennox Boyd, 1st Viscount Boyd of Merton, 1983. Amongst the newer graves we've got Derek Truscott, 2014, and here's a picture of a robin and a red tractor, looking very much like a Ferguson tractor. Some poignant words for Eric Kitt. I cannot bring the old days back, his hand I cannot touch, but I have such lovely memories of the one I love so much. And that was written by Patricia Ann. This is to David Norman Calvert, and the image is of a magician's hat and a wand. And further down it reads, "Magic was your life, and you were the magic in my life." Beryl Edna May Calvert. This is to Terence George Knight, who died in 1998, and the image at the top is of a large bulk carrying truck, and written on the truck at the top is T.G. Knight, so that would have been his truck, his business. Pair of graves here, very much cared for, with all the flowers around them. On the left we have Kevin David John Branton, just aged 32. And then across to the right here we have Richard Lee Smith, aged 30. Now it's interesting, they both died on the same day, 13th of November 2010. One was 30 and one was 32. Also on the back of this stone is an interesting image, and we see the name Rich and a guitar. This one to Richard Robinson, and the inscription around the top, "Once a rifleman, always a rifleman, swift and bold." Lawrence A.K. Champion, and the image here is of a very large digger, commonly in this country called a JCB, but it's a tracked digger, working presumably in a quarry or something similar. And up in this corner is another area with the small stones. This will be another one reserved for the graves of children. Close by is a remembrance garden. You can see amongst the wildflowers where people have put more cultured flowers or silk flowers to commemorate. And we have these memorial stones. These are normally for people that are buried elsewhere or were cremated. Well, that's the cemetery, the graveyard and the churchyard here at Saltash in Cornwall. A lot to see, much bigger than you expect. Certainly you should come and have a look. And Saltash is a pretty little place. Anyway, till the next time.